Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Well, I don't know about you guys out there, but the adventure of a lifetime for me, one of those places would be, since I live in Seattle, as you all know, would be to go to New York City. Never been there, actually. Thought about going there. Never been to a play in New York City. Never been to Broadway. Never been to Times Square. All of it. Never seen the Space Needle. Sorry, the Liberty never seen the Statue of Liberty. That's what I'm trying to say. Holly, have you ever been to New York City?
I have not, no, but my hairdresser just went and came back and she said the hotel elevators, you have to use your key card just to even get in the elevator. And if someone gets in the elevator with you and doesn't have their key card, get off the elevator because they try to like tag a ride up the elevator with you. I was like, you're giving me so much good travel advice. Thank you.
Hairdressers know for sure. That's for sure.
They are the unofficial counselors and angels of today's world.
Well, today for fun, we get to interview again the regulars. They come every couple of weeks, and we thought we'd dedicate this show to them and their adventure of a lifetime. Amy and Nancy Harrington are our guests, and they have got a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about, and it's really cool what they do. But the first of all is you guys just had the adventure of a lifetime, didn't you?
We did. We had an amazing time in New York City. We actually are East Coast girls, so we've been there many, many times, but we haven't been in, I think I haven't been in 7 years and Amy hasn't been in 10. So it was long overdue. And we had a blast. We did more stuff in 5 days than I think I've done in the last 5 years.
I'm still tired.
Did you do the classic, like get a $30 hot dog from one of
but my boyfriend did get a slice of 99-cent pizza that is still raving about. So
wow, they had 99-cent pizza and $30 hot dogs.
This is a good New York deal. It's 99-cent slice of pizza. If you want 2 slices of pizza and a Coke, it's $3.50.
See, now those are prices that I'd be willing to risk it on.
Still a good price, but that means they're charging you $1.50 for the can of Coke.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not reasonable.
You guys are New York people and East Coast people. Is it true that where I live on the West Coast, that delicatessens do not do the same job that they do in New York City in making a sandwich in New York? Is it different? Is the food style, even though pizza is pizza, but is pizza different there than pizza is here?
Yeah, New York pizza is like none other.
Yeah, Chinese food is really different. We had Chinese food. We made a point of having Chinese food because East Coast Chinese food, Boston, New York, very different than LA, West Coast Chinese food.
Oh, can you describe some of the differences?
Yeah, I mean, number one, most important thing, a spring roll is not an egg roll. So out here, you get spring rolls, which are very small. They have thinner crusts. They're kind of a little bit greasier. An egg roll is big, it's thick, and it's different. And you dip it in something called duck sauce on the East Coast, which is kind of like a sweet and sour sauce that you cannot get on the West Coast. And it's just the food is just chicken fingers. They have a thing in East Coast Chinese food called chicken fingers, which are batter dip pieces of chicken, but they're not like chicken McNuggets. They're like really good. You cannot get those here. So Chinese food is different. Pizza is different. And the theory is that it's the water that makes the pizza and the bagels different. So you get kind of a fluffier dough, but crunchy on the outside. Amazing.
Bagels are insane. Yeah.
Bagels are insane.
They are
we
known
ate
for their bagels
Polish-
too. Yeah.
We had ate at the other thing about New York is any kind of food you could possibly imagine, there are a bunch of restaurants for them. So we actually ate at a place called Little Poland, which was a Polish restaurant, and we had
Cool.
borscht and pierogies, which I had never had. And my favorite thing that I realized this week is every time any single person that you talk to who lives in New York will say to you at some point, I know the oldest restaurant in whatever neighborhood that serves whatever the specialty is. So it's like, I know the oldest restaurant in Soho that serves cappuccino. I know the oldest Italian restaurant in Brooklyn that makes the best lasagna. Like everybody's got the place as the oldest in the city. So food is the best part, really.
So in an Italian restaurant in New York City, is there a table in the back where a bunch of men are sitting at, and they all look like they may, be part of the mafia kind of, like you see in the movies?
Probably. We didn't go to Little Italy. I've only been to Little Italy once a long time ago, but I think that's a safe assumption. I think it's best to assume that anybody at a table at an Italian restaurant in New York may be connected in some way. And it might be like the Chechen mafia. You don't even know, but
Or the Russian mafia, or
exactly.
it can be anything.
It could be anything.
Yeah. So while you were there, you got to see a really cool show that actually won a couple of awards.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Saturday night, we saw a musical called Suffs, which is a musical about the suffragist movement in the early 1900s and women fighting for the right to vote. And it's an amazing, amazing story. And Shayna, is that how you say her name? She wrote the book, and she wrote the music and the lyrics, and she starred in it. And she won 2 Tony Awards on last night, one for the score and one for the play. So it was really fun. It was actually really fun to be rooting them on after just having seen them. I was so invested in it. Usually the Tonys, I watch the musical numbers and don't pay attention to much else, but it was really exciting to root her on. And it's a fabulous, fabulous show. We honestly went in thinking, oh, is this going to be cheesy? Is this going to be whitewashed? What's this going to be like? And it was amazing. We were in the 5th row, which was just absolutely incredible. And the cast was so talented. The music's great. And it's such an important story that even Amy and I, who consider ourselves feminists, there were points to the story that we were like, I did not know that. So it's really educational, and everybody should see it, especially with what's going on with women's rights these days.
Boy, it's interesting because if you talk to people that are younger today, maybe I was talking to a gentleman earlier. His son was born in 2001, which means he's 23 years old and is voting.
Right.
It's like, oh man. But a lot of people that are that age have no earthly idea how difficult it was to get the right to vote for women back in the 1920s, and how what they had to go do to do that. And I'm glad that there's a show to talk about that, to educate all of us. Holly was telling me that she's not even sure there's some things that you could teach, the show could teach her about that. And I consider her to be a highly, highly intelligent human being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the last time I had any history on that was probably in high school, and the books were like that, and it was like one blip and you need to memorize the date and what happened, and that was pretty much it, so and that
story. Yeah. I mean, in 2020 we all celebrated the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote. But what they don't tell you in the history books, and not many people realize, is that not all women got the right to vote in 1920. Only white women got the right to vote in 2020. And Black women did not get the right to vote for another several decades. So you know, there's a lot of things that are left out of those history books that that are talked about in this musical. So it's really great.
Yeah, and despite a lot of the suffragists being Black women who were really helping the movement propel forward, but at the end of the day, they got left behind. And you also picture these like women who are in their buttoned up dresses and their, you know, high collars and their, you know, corsets and everything. And what you don't realize is just how rebellious and bold they were. You know, they seem like, oh, these women who are daintily marching along the streets. And it's like, no, these women were rioting in the streets. They were like, they were camped outside the White House and went to prison and were thrown in prison and beaten and starved, you know, went on hunger strikes and then were forced to eat and were put through torture. And that's like not the image you get when you see those pictures in, you know, that they put once a year up for, you know, the annual, yeah, with their purple and yellow sashes. These women were like radical people. And there were so many waves of the movement that there were multiple generations. So the like first women who were really radical became kind of the conservative end of things when the new movement of young radical women came in. And now the older women who were once really radical seem really stuffy. And these new women are the ones that everybody's like, what are you talking about? And they're just, they're really powerful. And then when you start, like ever since we got back, I now have been taking a deep dive into the international suffragist movement, because obviously this happened around the world, but you don't think about that. You think about American women in the United States fighting for the right, but there were like 19 or 20 countries that gave women the right to vote before the United States did. And then it goes all the way up to like 2018 or something with Saudi Arabia, who just gave women the right to vote. So it's this like incredibly powerful story that nobody really talks about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my earliest recollection of hearing about the suffrage movement was Mary Poppins, right? And the British women marching for suffragettes, and they were called suffragettes, but in the United States we call them, and a lot of people confuse them, but in the US it's called suffragists because they felt suffragettes minimalize the word, you know, by making, you know, little the et made it small and minimal, so they're suffragists. But you know, the song from Dick Van Dyke, we're clearly soldiers.
I've forgotten about that. That's true.
Though we adore men individually, but as a group they're rather suited. Which we don't agree with that statement. It is a great musical theater line.
Well, Holly, you took some time to come up with some things that you didn't know that you would like to know. Jim?
I probably don't know a lot. So by the power of AI, we now have 20 questions related to the U.S.
Excellent. We have a bunch of printed out research too, because we do not pretend to be experts. So
yeah, no worries if you don't know, like best guess is great. I didn't get the answers, just the questions, so it'll be a nice little like spin-off like prompt that you can like free form conversation around.
Great.
Related to when Amy was saying like there was waves of it, the first question was, when did the women's suffrage movement begin in the US? Because obviously the right to vote was kind of towards the end, not the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So
it began around the time of the Civil War.
Right.
Because it was an offshoot of the abolitionist movement. So once Black people were freed, Black men started to fight to get the right to vote. And so women joined in on that. But a lot of even the Black men were like, no, this is our time. You go do your thing and you can get the right to vote later. And it got pushed aside. So it really was an offshoot of that.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And in
that
1869 is when Susan B. Anthony co-founded the National Women's Suffrage Association.
I
So
have
that
heard
was
of
like
that.
one of the first organizations. Then there was another organization called the American Women's Suffrage Association that was formed, and then they came together in 1890
So
to
this started
create.
even before, the
Yeah, so
1900s.
then that came together in National American Women's Suffrage Association. That was 1890, so
Cool.
30 years.
30
Four.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, things moved a lot slower back then. You had to put it on a piece of paper and a pony.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
That actually ties into two of the other ones. So one of
Yeah.
the other questions said, how did World War I impact the women's suffrage movement, and who are some of the key leaders in the women's suffrage movement? So Susan B. Anthony was one of them. And then you kind of talked a little bit about how World War I played into it.
Well, by World War I, the women in the U.S. had the right to vote.
Mm.
World War I apparently had more of an impact in Europe. We've started reading recently, like Europe didn't really have, women weren't voting in Europe until after like World War I and World War II. So that really seems to be kind of where that impact was had more. And, it makes sense given that all of a sudden men are at war and women are the ones that have to, take up the slack and go work in ways they hadn't before and keep society running. Kind of hard to deny someone the right to vote when they're finally visibly running the show,
Amy,
Well,
I'm going to contradict you a little bit because they actually didn't have the right to vote during World War I yet.
correct.
Right. Sorry. Yes, you're correct.
World
World
War
War
II.
I ended
Yeah.
in
World War I
1918.
was
Yeah.
ended in 18, and it did actually impact the movement because
Yeah.
it really they were trying to get to Woodrow Wilson and get him to
Right.
sign on to support the suffrage movement in his election, and because of the war, all he wanted to focus on was the war, not talk about the women's movement. So yeah, it did really impact it. It delayed it several
course.
years.
Mm.
But right
Yeah.
after World
I was
War
thinking
I
World War II.
was the League of Nations, and there's some things kind of started to kind of open up a little bit
Yeah.
Yeah.
because of that. And then World War II, and I think, Amy, what you were talking really about was Rosie the Riveter
Yeah.
in World War II, because the women had to fill out the workforce because all the men were getting trained to go to war.
Right.
And so they're the ones who built all of the equipment that the men went and fought with.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was so
Amazing.
it is amazing to me that this whole thing started, well, it's been going on forever, but even in the 20th century, we're still not where we need to be as far as everybody. I mean, I grew up in the 60s. Remember what was famous in the 60s was there was a piece of undergarment that people started burning.
Yeah.
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 They were more uncomfortable back then.
Yeah, that's true.
They're more
That's
comfortable now.
They are more comfortable now, although I still like to burn one every once in a while. But it's true. And, there's actually a fashion thing related to the suffragists that I just learned about too, which is women started to wear shorter skirts, like shorter, like to their ankles,
Ankle
like
length instead of
ankle
floor
length, not floor length. And they started to show their bloomers. And the bloomers, so they had pants, pants under their skirts, and the bloomers are actually named after one of the women in the suffragist movement who started wearing that fashion, and her last name was Bloomer, and that's where bloomers come from.
That's cool. I had no idea.
But
I know
then
the term
once-
bloomers.
Yeah, but then once people started focusing so much attention on the bloomers, she stopped wearing them. She went back to wearing the normal because she was like, I don't want the movement to be about clothes.
Bloomers.
So she stopped wearing her bloomers.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the day when showing your ankles was kind of considered risque?
Isn't that amazing?
Hard to imagine nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, those women would have heart attacks if they saw women dressed.
Oh my God. Talk about New York. There are some things in New York that are like, whoa. Clearly, you don't live with your parents because they would not have let you out of the house. That skirt.
Well, it's really remarkable. So in New York City, when you were there and you saw the play, and the play impacted you a great deal because you've done a lot of studying around that afterwards. What was the biggest thing that you discovered that you didn't know about the suffrage movement?
I didn't realize how much infighting there was. Like, I thought they were all just united and were marching together, but there really were factions. There really was this old school women who had been in the fight since the early 1900s, and they were very, very polite, and they were just waiting and trying to, like, slowly maneuver in, and then there was this new faction of women that came around the 1910s led by Alice Paul, and they were like, no, we're not waiting any longer. We've already been waiting for 20 years. We don't want to wait any longer. And so they were the real radical ones that decided they were going to picket outside of the White House and go to jail if they had to and do a hunger strike when they were there. So I didn't realize that there was so much infight. And plus, like Amy said, there was also the group of Black women suffragists who were on their own trying to get their rights, and they came together, but there was still, when they came to meet with Alice Paul and her group, even Alice Paul was like, look, if we ask for everything, we'll get nothing. So we have to take it one step at a time. And so the Black women were like, they were in the fight, but they knew that they weren't going to get their rights at the time. So I didn't really realize how much infighting there was within the movement.
Yeah. And for me, it was kind of some of the personalities. Like, I've seen the photos of this woman before. Her name is Inez Milholland, right? So she was one of the main people in the movement, in Alice Paul's movement. And when they did their March on Washington, I don't know if you've ever seen this photo of her, but she was very dramatic. She was a really amazing feminist, but she also had this flair for drama. And she went to the march on horseback, on a white horse in a long flowy white dress and with a gold crown. And she led the march through Washington. And so, like, that personality was really fascinating. And then there was a guy who worked for Woodrow Wilson whose name was Dudley Moore. And Dudley Moore was a, politician, but he got really swept up in the women's movement, and he ended up quitting. He left the administration because of Wilson's lack of support for the suffragists. And then he ended up marrying Doris Stevens, who is one of the women in the movement who is a character in the show. And she wrote the book that the entire Suffs, story is based on. And she and Dudley Moore got married in real life, and they only married for like 8 years, and they got divorced. But he really helped them get them out of prison, and really, like, was this great ally. So the play is cool because there's no men in the cast and there are no men in the orchestra. It's entirely women and non-binary people. So it's like kind of reverse Shakespeare. It's like, rather than having the women play, the men play the women play the men. So there's a woman that plays Woodrow Wilson, and there's a woman that plays Dudley Moore. And it's cool. They're a little caricature-y, but it's like, men are just part of the story. You don't feel like men are being bashed during the show. And it's just really fun to see a show that's all women, on stage and in the orchestra pit. And but to learn about some of the personalities, I think, was the coolest thing, and to give it more of a face than just like the couple of names that we're taught about, Susan B. Anthony and Ida B. Wells, and these women who are really powerful. But it's also like there's a whole other set of women that are so cool that just never get the recognition in that little blurb in the textbook,
Yeah.
And if you're younger than 40, know this isn't the British comedian Dudley Moore.
No, it's not
This
Dudley
is
Moore.
another guy.
No, not the actor.
I
My-
love Dudley Moore.
My favorite movie, Crazy People.
Mhm.
You ever seen Crazy People, Kevin? Just as an aside.
The one that strikes me that I always loved him was the one with Gilgood and
Arthur.
Arthur.
And
Sir
Liza
Arthur.
Minnelli.
With Liza Minnelli, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Arthur.
that was the first time I'd ever heard or seen Dudley Moore, but he was remarkable for being a
Well,
short.
I highly recommend, as a side note, I highly recommend Crazy People, a Dudley Moore movie with Daryl Hannah.
Oh,
Plug.
And it is about truth in advertising, and it's very, very funny. But
It's
anyway,
fun.
we digress.
Nothing to do with the women's movement, but very fun.
so Holly, do you have any other questions that you're dying to know?
Sure, yeah, all of these are actually interesting to me, but I just wanted to take 1 second to include our listeners and give them an opportunity for some prizes. And in our little grab bag of prizes, we have like an electronics section. I think last time I looked at it, there was like 5 different ones. I think it was like maybe headphones, kind of like you see Kevin and I wearing right now, an electric toothbrush, things like that. But we would be more than happy to dip into those if within the time frame of Monday, today we're airing live on YouTube on Positive Talk Radio. And if you can drop one name of one of the key leaders of women's U.S. suffrage movement in the chat, we will watch and we will comment and let you know next steps for winning your little piece of swag.
Excellent. Excellent.
I like
Or
that.
you can also go to the store at positivetalkradio.net, and there's a bunch of stuff there with t-shirts that have got cool sayings on them and stuff like that. You can always pick up something there for your friends and family.
Yep, that one's available 24/7. So yeah, and congrats, Kevin. You sold a T-shirt recently, I heard.
I heard that too. I have no idea who, but
huge shout out to the new T-shirt wearer. And what saying was on that T-shirt that they bought?
I had no earthly idea.
I remember. Do you want to hear it?
That's catchy.
Yes, please.
It said, "Be kind to one another because each other's all we've got." Kevin
I've
McDonald.
I've heard that before.
I love that. That's so cool. I love that you put your slogan on a t-shirt. That's awesome.
Well, we need to come up with some good ones for you as well, because I think starting to put some of the featured guests on with their quotable quotes onto the t-shirts would be super
I like
fun.
that.
Yeah, feel free to follow up with me and let me know if you can think of one. The text with how big you got to get it, it's a pretty short one-liner. So keeping that in mind. But yes, going down our little list here, the next one says, what was the Seneca Falls Convention and why was it significant?
Nan.
In your notes somewhere.
It is in the notes, yeah.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can find it quickly.
Yeah.
That was so in 1840, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and someone else attended the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London, and they were forced into the gallery along with all the women who attended. Their indignation led them 8 years later to organize the first U.S. Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York. So it was in 1848.
So it was a women's rights.
Very first women's rights.
Very first one in 1848.
Yeah.
And for those that really don't know, because history has a tendency to get obscured over time. In 1848, women were not really considered anywhere near equal people.
Oh no.
They were part of your estate, or they were part of your property, for lack of a better thing. And this is, so it's taken a long time, and it's been bit by bit, and a little forward and a little backwards, and a little bit more forward and a little bit more backwards. And it's just amazing to me that we as human beings would look at people that way. It's like when the country was brand new, a person of color was considered like what was it? 2/3 of what or 3/4 of what a white person was, and only landowners could vote. Nobody
Right.
else but people who owned land,
Yeah.
which was just the white people.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, and only certain people were allowed to own land. I don't even know if women were allowed to own land back
No,
then.
you
Not
weren't.
allowed
No, and in fact,
to own anything. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look back, we have an amazing trademark and patent attorney that we work with, and she has taught us about this. But women invented a lot of amazing things, like the plastic bag. I know plastic's bad, but like shopping bags, women invented. Everyday things that make life easier, and most of none of the early inventions that women did are credited to those women because women weren't allowed to file a patent. So their husbands would file the patents under their name. And so not only didn't they get credit, but all the money from the inventions went to the men. So there are all these, women who invented things that didn't get the credit or the money for the inventions that they came up with, because it would have to that can only be under a man's name. I mean, women couldn't get their own credit cards till the 70s.
That one is still the biggest shocker, and it's given me so much more perspective and compassion towards like my mom and my grandma.
Mhm.
That was never talked about, not in any of my education, not in any of my family history, none of it, because I even knew my great grandma, and I had no idea that so many of their decisions to be who they were and to do things the way they did it were based off their reality, which was they couldn't even have a credit score.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, mind blown. Mind blown.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that we had discovered in our research this week, and Kevin, you were just talking about it going back and forth, the movement. This was one of my favorite facts, that in 1797, single women actually were temporarily granted the right to vote in New Jersey.
Interesting.
The state's original constitution, which was adopted in 1776, declared that all inhabitants that were worth 50 pounds would be able to vote. And since this was such a vague guideline, new wording was adopted in 1797 that granted women in New Jersey suffrage. So for 10 years, single women, this is the kicker, single women were allowed to vote. Married women were not, because married women did not own, that were not worth 50 pounds, because all of the money belonged to their husband. So for 10 years in New Jersey, single women could vote, but married women could not. And then in 1807, they were realized their mistake and rewrote the law so that only free white male citizens over 21 could vote.
That's the three steps forward, 2 or 1 step back.
Yeah. We continue to take.
Yeah. So,
It's a sad, it really, the history of it though is really should be instructive for all of us, that even though we might not have everything going the way we'd like it right this moment, that we keep working for it and keep working for it and do it kind of loudly at times, because in that respect, people will it becomes more the norm. Let me give you an example. There was a time in this country, and if you're younger, you're not going to appreciate this, but there was a time in this country, if you were a black woman and a white man or vice versa, you could not get married. Wasn't that long ago.
Until very recently, yeah.
And now people don't even think anything of it. Well, depending upon, never mind. But most people don't think anything of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And nor should they, because people are people.
Yeah. I mean, think about how recently gay people got the right to vote, to marry.
Yes.
Everybody who is listening to this podcast is old enough to remember that.
Yep. And my favorite couple in the entire world, they are 2 women who dearly, 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 they've been together for like 25 years, dearly love each other. You can see it still in their eyes when they look at each other. And it's like, there was a time when they weren't allowed to get married. It's like, that's just utter foolishness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's why I know we don't get terribly political on this show, but it is why what's happening right now is scary, because rights have been stripped away from women, from gay people. It is happening, and it's such a slippery slope. And what has been laid out as the plans for what could happen moving forward, it's going to take us back to a time where nobody wants to go. And if you can do it to women and you can do it to gay people, who's next? And I think certain people think they're safe, and they're not.
Yeah.
What's the best? So if I'm listening right now and I'm like, okay, I want to do something about that. Like, what's the best place to go to be like, okay, I can send an email, I can click a thing, I can send a message to my senator or something like that.
Right.
What's your advice for people on that?
Yeah. Go ahead. I saw you take a deep breath.
One of my favorite, in terms of like grassroots activism, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that everybody sign up for a newsletter called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And it's a almost daily newsletter from this woman, Jess Craven. And Jess is a progressive activist. And every day she publishes an email that has 5 things in it. And literally, if you do the 5 things that she suggests, it's going to take you about 5 minutes out of your day. And it addresses important topics that are happening at the moment, things that Congress bills that they're trying to pass, or, issues at the border or women's rights. And she'll say, call your senator and say this.
Cool. Go, Jess.
Text your congressman and say, and you can copy and paste the script. You can read the script right into your, official's voicemail. It's really easy these days to join Resist Bot on your phone, and that will help you find your representatives, or just Google them. You can Google your representative, and you'll get not only their DC office, but their local office, which is easier to get through to sometimes. And if you connect with Jess's message, which I would think a lot of people who are on this call, on this, watching this podcast would, or listening to it, it is an amazing way to be active without having to figure out how to do it. And it's a really great, something might not speak to you today, but 2 days from now, she might write about something and you go, that's been bothering me. Healthcare. I'm going to call my senator about that healthcare issue. And it's been life-changing for us. We do it every day. She's one of our Power Passionistas. We also post her newsletter in our sisterhood every day. So you can find it there as well. But I highly, highly recommend signing up for Jess's newsletter.
I love it. If you hear this show, Jess, contact Amy and Nancy to come hang out with us on Positive Talk Radio.
Yeah, we'll get her on. We'll definitely get her on.
Oh, I've got something. I got a question for the 3 of you. And if you answer this question perfectly and you put it into the chat, I will give you $20 if you do it before the end of the show.
All right.
You guys don't count because
We
I
don't
know
count.
that you've got.
Okay.
So this is a Holly assignment.
Yeah, this
Google by the end of the show. I got 20 minutes. Okay.
This is for one of our listeners. If they,
I get you on
shouldn't
YouTube.
answer. We
Okay.
should
So
On
going to
YouTube.
the listeners, if you put it in the YouTube comments.
Exactly. 2020 was the highest presidential turnout for a presidential election in the last 40 years. And so more people voted in 2020 than they had in the previous 40 years. Can you tell me what percentage of eligible adults voted in the 2020 election?
It's an excellent question.
That's a good question.
I love the incentives on this show.
I don't know the exact number, but I know it's pathetic.
And keep in mind, this is the highest percentage, the highest, the creme de la creme, the queen of whatever, and 66.8% of eligible people in this country voted who was going to be running the country for the next 4 years, which means 33.4% of the people did not. A third of the people that are eligible to vote just said, "Oh, I don't care."
Yeah, it's really not that important.
Yeah, no big deal.
And what's the question they need to answer by the end of the show?
So if you come, the answer is 66.8%, and if you put that into the chat, I'll give you $20. Of course, you'll have to sign me first. So there, but no, well, just leave your email and we'll get in contact with you, because that's a really important number. Because think about what our country, if everybody was invested in what was best for our country, and 100% or 97% of the people voted, including, by the way, a lot of young people who don't think that it's important. If they all thought it was important, the whole thing would change. Everything, it would change. So my advice to everybody is, please just vote. I don't really give a crap who you vote for. Use your brain and come up with what you think is the right thing, and then vote for somebody in a positive way. There you go.
But if you need a suggestion on who to vote for, feel free to reach out, because it's confusing, and if you just need a little nudge, happy to nudge.
It can be overwhelming.
It is overwhelming, especially when you drill down. It's like, it's like, okay, I get the ballot. I'm fairly knowledgeable. I'm fairly active. I get my ballot every midterm and every election, and it's like, how am I supposed to know what judge to vote for? How am I supposed to know who to vote for sheriff? And it's like, those are more important than the president.
Right. I think recent history has shown, I think all of us thought, oh, that stuff doesn't matter. I'll just vote for who my neighbor voted for, or I'm not going to vote at all, or I'll pick the name that I like. But I think recent history has shown us that those positions matter a lot, because those are the people that are actually making these changes that are affecting us all right now. So
school board is important.
School boards, very important. Yeah.
Huge.
And there are people that are, frankly, that are running that should not be running for whatever reason, but because they are American citizens, they can run. And so it's incumbent upon us as being good citizens, I think, especially nowadays with so many things are riding on it.
So much. Yeah. I mean, I know that it's like The Bachelor. It's the most dramatic rose ceremony ever, but this really is the most important election ever. And there's something called Project 2025, and I don't know who has or hasn't read about it, but it's basically a plan, a 900-page plan that's laid out, that's gonna potentially set back women's rights and gay LGBTQ rights, and everything, Social Security and Medicare, and there's a plan in place to roll these things back. This is not just like, oh gee, sounds really good on the campaign trail to rile people up. There's a plan. So if you, again, I do support people voting for whoever they want, but if your concerns are about certain progressive or even just liberal policies, you should educate yourself on Project 2025 and learn what the plan is, and it may inspire you to go out and vote on election day.
And as well it should. Now, since this is Positive Talk Radio, I'm going to leave it to Holly. Bring it back to positive, Holly.
Sure, we're going down a fun little factoid questionnaire related to the women's right to vote in the U.S. since Amy and Nancy, Amy and Nanny just got back from New York. And what was the name of the show that you watched?
SUFFS.
Yeah, and it won some Tony Awards. There we go.
Tony Awards written by the brilliant Shayna Taub, who is now working on the Devil Wears Prada musical with Elton John.
Cool.
She's a powerhouse. So
Yeah.
So
It is amazing to me, you know, I just have to bring this up just because I've fallen in love, I'm afraid, with this girl who is a beautiful singer. She is traveling the world. She's got a really nice boyfriend. I think he's a football player, so he's got to be nice. And I tell you, Taylor Swift.
You're a Swiftie?
Apparently he's a Swiftie.
I'm a dyed, and I tell you, she is now granted, I haven't met her personally, but she appears to be a really lovely person who's got her head on straight and she is selling out more stadiums than the Beatles did. That's saying something.
Her fans are causing earthquakes. There's seismic reaction when her fans are freaking out at the concerts, literally.
and this is a very, very powerful woman, and she's, I think, using her power in the right way. And so and I wish that upon all your sisters out there. And we need to talk about the sisterhood. And as a matter of fact, maybe we should move into that right now, because the sisterhood is a program that you guys are developing, and tell us about that. I know Holly's a member.
Yes, if you would like to meet me or Amy or Nancy, here's how. Take it away, ladies.
So the sisterhood is our online community. So it's a virtual community where you can come, you can hang out, you can talk, you can share your wins, you can complain if something's going wrong, and people will support you and help you out and lift you up. And we have classes and courses and workshops and all sorts of amazing content. And it's just a place where women can come and feel supported and empowered and share in what Amy and I have in our real life sisterhood. We share that with other women in our community.
So if you are a woman, or you know a woman that you love, you should get them involved with this group, because they are really designed to help each other, and it's a social group and so much more. And you guys should be, well, first of all, I know you're really proud of the work that you're doing. So congratulations.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, tomorrow night. In fact, now is a really great time to join, because tomorrow night we are having our first virtual pajama party. So it's Passionistas Pajama Party at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. And just come as you are, casual, bring a little something to drink, something to eat. And we're just going to hang out and talk. So if you go to the Passionistas Project /positive talk, you can find a way to join the sisterhood for free and come to the pajama party tomorrow night.
That's going to be
and if you upgrade to premium through that link, you'll also get a special Positive Talk discount, but you do not need to upgrade to come to the pajama party.
Correct.
And by the way, I just want to say that's one of the differences between men and women. I think if you got 20 guys together, you couldn't find a pair of pajamas between them.
Sweatpants. We'll have a sweatpants party.
Okay, then we'll wear our NBA shorts.
No, plenty of pajamas here.
I'll use your PTR mug I have, Kevin, for my sleepy time tea.
There you go. And Amy and Nancy have been doing that. How long have you been doing this? I know that you guys have been sisters for a lot longer than you've been doing this, but how long, and whose idea was it simultaneously hatched between the two of you, or did one of you say, hey, this would be fun, and the other one said, hey, you're right. How did this work? How did this come about?
Yeah. Like most things that we do, I don't remember. Like we do sort of have the same ideas at the same time. We were batting around the idea of doing a podcast for a few years because we were at that point we were firmly entrenched in the world of celebrity interviewing, and we loved interviewing people. So we were trying to figure out what that podcast would be. And then we didn't really want to do a celebrity interview podcast because we felt like other people were doing it and had access to those people, bigger people than we did. And then, frankly, the world changed, and the Me Too movement happened, Time's Up movement happened, and I think we both at the same time started thinking like, what can we do to help women? And then we started having conversations. We went to our first women's march in 2017. And that really, I think after that, we really started talking more seriously about some sort of women's empowerment thing. And the idea for the podcast came along. So we started planning that over the summer of 2017. Our first interview was in late 2017, and we posted it in early 2018. So that's when the Passionistas Project officially launched.
I got a question for the two of you, because if you follow the show, you know that we've talked in depth about interviewing celebrities and all those famous people that you've met and all of that. And I'm just kind of curious to know from your perspective, why is it that we tend to put famous people that we maybe see on a screen that's they're like 3 stories tall or whatever, and we tend to put them on a pedestal like they're better than the rest of us and they know more than the rest of us, but we don't tend to do that with people like the people that you're working with and the people that you interview and that are part of the sisterhood. And I really wish that we would change it, because I think there are teachers in this country that I would much rather interview than a hoity-toity actress who's 23 years old and just because she's got good genes.
Yeah.
Teachers, nurses, doctors, activists, people that are giving up their, shot at that cushy, wealthy life, who are doing things just because they want to help people. I don't know. I don't know what it is. And I mean, I have to say, I get swept up in it. We went to a taping of Late Night with Seth Meyers while we were in New York. And it was like, I got so excited that Seth Meyers was standing like 2 feet away from me. It's like, oh my God, there he is. And it's like, yeah, what is the big deal? He's just a person. But there is something about the energy of that, like, machine that's been built, that it's like, oh, that person's really special because he's on TV. And I think that's why it's so important to us to do what we're doing. Like, we've had people say like, oh, well, what you really need to do in the community is you need to get like a Brene Brown to be a part of the community. And we're like, no, our experts are women who are identifiable. They're women who like are living good lives, who are doing good in the world, who you could look at and go, oh, I could have that lifestyle. It's not like private island people whose lives are unattainable. It's like this person you can look at and go, oh, they're just like me. And they really are, that's way more important to us and way more interesting than, I mean, we have fun doing our pop culture interviews. We've had some of the best times ever interviewing famous people and, just having fun together doing it. But I'd much rather have a conversation with someone who's doing good in the world and really, passionate about what they're doing.
Mhm.
The one person that taught me, in just listening to her being interviewed, taught me that was, I'm a Paul McCartney fan.
Yes.
Sir Paul McCartney. He's like his wife. I mean, when Paul McCartney walks into a room, everybody stands up and cheers, except Linda didn't. Linda was married to the man. He was a human being. She saw the good, the bad, the ugly, and the in between. And so we're just all human beings.
Yeah.
But I tell you, the people that are really making an effort to make a difference in this world, and that's the two of you, you stand above the rest of us because you're trying to make a difference, not because of the celebrity that you have, but because of what you bring to the world. And I thank you for that.
Well, I'm right back at you. You guys are doing the exact same thing. So,
Well, this is all Holly's fault.
Oh,
everything's Holly's fault.
Well, I'm not married to her, so I can't say everything, but you know,
I'll take the blame on that one. That's the perfect kind of CompuSalt that I am okay
what?
Yeah.
CompuSalt. It's a compliment and insult merged into one, or like masked as the other.
Oh, that was a pure compliment because you are because you've been with me for a long time and you've made this continue to grow and stuff, and so I wouldn't be able to do it without you. I really wouldn't. So there.
Oh.
So there. And that's gonna be on YouTube for the rest of time. So don't take that off, okay?
Yeah. When we go through editing, Miss Demi, that one gets to stay, I guess.
I think that should be the clip you pull.
And I was thinking like the Swiftie clip for Kevin might be kind of cute.
Tag her in the post.
Yeah.
And she may even see it one day. Wouldn't that be fun? We're going to run out of time. I want to thank you guys for being here, and I'm glad you enjoyed your trip from New York. Now you went from LA or from California to New York back. Is the jet lag gone now? Are you back to normal?
First night was a little brutal coming back. I think it was partly just the excitement of that. I mean, it was like the best 5 days in New York. So I think we were just like so fired up with adrenaline that it was hard to, but I feel back to normal now.
I do too. We've had a good weekend of rest and catching up on jet lag. So I feel back to normal, but it definitely took a lot. I go back and forth to the East Coast quite a bit, and I never used to really feel jet lag, but I definitely felt it this time.
Well, and we need to wrap it up, but I just want to, this time, we've gone clockwise and counterclockwise and stuff. So now whoever has an H in their first or last name goes first.
Not confusing at all.
That's all of us.
That means, yeah. What's your middle name, Kevin? I was trying to think of there's no. What's your middle name, Kevin?
Scott.
No H's at all.
No H's at all.
Is it Scott?
Scott. As in, a good Scottish lad.
Well, I will happily start. I would like to invite all you amazing listeners out there right now hearing us to come back for joining, featuring the Passionistas on Positive Talk Radio. We will be back with them the first Monday of next month. And if you don't catch it on the first Monday, the third Monday. And from there, you can pick up our feeds on our podcast to listen in.
I'll go next.
Go ahead.
I would love to give a shout out to Carolyn Koppel and Ari Cobb and Aaron Cobb. Aaron's 19th birthday was Saturday, and Carolyn founded Aaron's Coffee Corner in his honor. It's an amazing foundation that you should all go check out and donate to. And I just want to give a shout out to Aaron for a very happy 19th and healthy 19th birthday celebration. So.
Love that. And I will say in my time that everybody who has the opportunity to go to New York and see Suffs, please do so. It was fabulous, and it's really powerful and a strong reminder. And it ends with this great message that there's still work to be done, and that we should look back at our ancestors to see what is possible and to keep marching on.
Yeah. And it's a great show for men to see. There were men in the audience. The first people on their feet when the cast came out to take their bows were the men in front of us. They were completely moved and excited by it. So do not miss Suffs.
If just a personal point of view, if you're a man and you do not want your mother, your sister, your daughter, or your wife to live their best life, then go back in the hole from where you came from. Because we all should want everything that you guys can do. Because 50% of the country are women, and think of all the wonderful things that we could do together, and the magical medicines that could be created, and if everybody were to work together. Because you guys, I know they do have a brain, and some of them really do use it, and it's good. So take care of your mother, your brother, or your your brother who acts like your sister. Anyway, I'm sorry, but thank you so much, ladies, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
both.
having us.
Always a blast. We'll see you with Toby Spears the beginning of next month.
And Toby Spears, tell us about that real quick.
Toby has an organization called Be Humanitarian. They organize trips to Guatemala to work with the local communities there and help build up the communities and the education and nutritional systems for kids in Guatemala. And she's amazing. So
Awesome. Now, you two always run away, so stay right where you are, and we'll be right back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at KM Media.